Have you ever thought that one small action, just a few seconds, could change your entire life? Could even alter the destiny of a multi-billion-dollar empire? The story I'm about to tell you will make you rethink everything. It begins with Jessica Parker, a 27-year-old waitress in New York. Her world revolved around one thing, earning just enough to care for her ailing younger sister. Then, with a single Heimlich maneuver, she saved the life of a customer. What she didn't know was that this act of kindness wouldn't just save a man's life, it would bring her an inheritance worth $2.8 billion. Yes, you heard that right. $2.8 billion. But here's where the drama begins. Just 3 days after the billionaire's death, his family dragged Jessica into court, accusing her of fraudulent manipulation of the will. Suddenly, the young waitress who only wanted to pay rent and buy medicine for her sister was at the center of a legal firestorm. Would Jessica keep the fortune that destiny had handed her, or lose everything stripped bare in the court of public opinion? This wasn't just a battle over money. It was a battle over trust, truth, and the value of one selfless act. Don't take your eyes off the screen, because this story will grip your heart, twist it with outrage, and finally leave you breathless with hope. Jessica Parker's life had never been a bed of roses. She grew up in Queens, New York, a neighborhood bustling with noise, culture, and diversity, but also heavy with hardship. Her mother died when she was still a child, leaving Jessica and her younger sister to cling to one another for survival. Their father, a broken and disheartened man, had long since walked away, leaving behind only an unfillable void and the crushing burden of survival that now fell squarely on Jessica's shoulders. Her childhood was marked by rushed study sessions, odd part-time jobs, and the relentless pressure of making ends meet. Yet despite the struggles, Jessica was bright, determined, and full of ambition. She dreamed of becoming a doctor, a healer, someone who could bring hope to those dealt an unfair hand by life. With relentless effort, she earned admission into a prestigious medical school, a monumental source of pride for her fragile little family. But fate dealt her another devastating blow. Her sister Anna was diagnosed with congenital heart disease. The staggering cost of treatment, endless hospital bills, complex surgeries, and overpriced medications forced Jessica to put her dreams on hold. After 2 years of exhausting study, she dropped out, heartbroken but more resolute than ever. To pay rent for their cramped apartment in the shadows of the city and to keep Anna's prescriptions filled, Jessica took whatever work she could find. Eventually, she landed a job as a waitress at the Velvet Room, one of Manhattan's most exclusive fine dining restaurants, where the price of a single entree equaled her week's wages. There, Jessica worked herself to the bone, double shifts, endless nights, sunrise to midnight. And yet she always carried her signature crooked smile, a smile that regulars had come to love. She wasn't just efficient, she was extraordinary. Not a single glass ever spilled under her watch, and she remembered every customer's quirks. Mr. Smith never wants onions. Mrs. Jones always orders her coffee black, no sugar. Those little details, so easily overlooked by others, spoke volumes about Jessica's care and devotion. Still, life at the Velvet Room was far from glamorous. The restaurant's ruthless manager loomed over her, scrutinizing every move. 30 seconds too long making that cocktail, docked $10, he would bark. Her paychecks were chipped away by petty deductions, and she endured jealous glares and whispered mockery from envious co-workers. But Jessica bore it all in silence. She never complained, never faltered. Deep down, she carried only one thought, one unshakable driving force: Anna has to live. To Jessica, Anna wasn't just a sister. She was her light, her anchor, her reason to fight through every grueling day. Jessica would give anything, sacrifice everything to keep the fragile flame of Anna's hope burning bright. It was a bustling Saturday night at the Velvet Room. The clinking of silverware, the low hum of conversations, and the smooth notes of live jazz wove together into an atmosphere of elegance, an atmosphere that was as glamorous as it was suffocating. Jessica darted between tables without pause, sweat beading on her forehead, but her smile never faltering. She glided from guest to guest. Aristocrats, powerful businessmen, faces she knew belonged to a world far removed from her own. At a quiet corner of the restaurant sat a gentleman in his early 70s. Unlike the others, he was dressed simply, no flashy watch, no tailored bravado. Yet his eyes carried a distant sorrow, a weight of memories that seemed to anchor him somewhere far beyond the crystal chandeliers. He gazed upward at the glittering light as if searching for something, or trying desperately to forget it. Jessica noticed him. Something unexplainable stirred inside her. She carried over the prime ribeye and a bottle of red wine he had ordered. "Enjoy your meal, sir," she said softly, her smile gentle. He nodded, lips pressed thin. The steak was placed before him. He cut into the first piece. Then it happened. The man suddenly convulsed, choking violently, his face turning crimson as his hands clawed at his throat. The chunk of meat had lodged deep. The restaurant's elegant hum collapsed into chaos. Gasps, shrieks, chairs scraping. Every eye turned toward him in panic. A few waiters stepped forward, then froze, retreating in terror, unsure and helpless. They had been trained to serve, not to save. But Jessica was different. 2 years in medical school had given her precious knowledge, and years of caring for her sister had sharpened her instincts. Her body moved before her mind could hesitate. "Excuse me, I know first aid," she called out, firm, pushing past the crowd. She slipped behind the man, locking her arms around his torso, her fist pressed into his abdomen just above the navel. She drew in a deep breath. 1 thrust, 2, 3. With every pull upward, she poured in all her strength, all her determination, as if her own sister's life were on the line. And then pop, a muffled sputter. The piece of steak shot free, clattering onto the polished floor. The man collapsed back against the chair, gasping, lips pale, but eyes wide alive. His gaze locked on Jessica, and a weak but genuine smile touched his face. "Thank you, my dear," he rasped, voice trembling. "It seems I owe life a little more time." Jessica nodded, her chest still heaving, heart pounding like a drum inside her ribcage. Relief washed over her in waves, leaving her almost dizzy. She hadn't thought about who he was or what world he belonged to. She only knew she had saved a life. What she couldn't know was that this single moment, this act of courage in a room full of frozen bystanders, would change the course of her destiny forever. In that moment, caught between chaos and relief, Jessica had no idea whose life she had just saved. To her, he was simply an older gentleman in distress, and she, armed with the scraps of medical training she still carried, had done what anyone should do. She helped. What she didn't know was that the sorrowful-eyed man she'd pulled back from the brink was none other than William Morrison, one of New York's wealthiest and most powerful tycoons. The founder of a sprawling commercial real estate empire across Manhattan, Morrison's net worth stretched into the billions. William Morrison was a peculiar man, eccentric even, but beneath it all lay a depth of spirit that few ever glimpsed. He had a habit of frequenting his favorite restaurants without warning, never reserving the VIP sections or demanding any kind of special treatment. He preferred the quiet corners, places where he could disappear into the flow of ordinary life. To him, that was where truth lived. The taste of real life, he often said, is something money can never buy. He believed it was only by dissolving into the crowd that he could truly see the raw fragments of humanity that wealth and power so often concealed. That night at the Velvet Room, Morrison wasn't there just for his beloved ribeye steak. He carried a weight heavier than the world's fortune. His doctors had told him with the kind of clinical coldness that crushed hope that his failing heart had only a few weeks left in it. His time was running out. He had planned to enjoy his meal, return home, and complete his final will, a document he had rewritten and reconsidered countless times, yet one that still felt incomplete, as if something vital was missing. Jessica might have expected a generous tip for her service that night, maybe even $500, an amount that to her meant survival. But Morrison chose a different gesture. He left no cash behind. Instead, he placed an embossed business card on the table. On it was nothing more than his name and a phone number, along with a single handwritten note in elegant script. "We will meet again." Jessica stared at the card, puzzled. Meet again. Maybe he just wants to thank me properly, she thought, and tucked it absent-mindedly into the pocket of her apron. She couldn't possibly know then that this small rectangle of cardstock was no mere token of gratitude. It was the key to a door she had never dared to imagine, a door that once opened would change her life forever. 3 days later, Jessica's life was still grinding forward in its usual blur of long shifts and endless worries when the phone rang. A strange number. She hesitated, then answered. Miss Jessica Parker, a professional clipped voice intoned. "This is Green & Partners Law Firm. We need to meet with you immediately regarding the will of Mr. William Morrison." Jessica froze. William Morrison. The name rang a bell, but why would it have anything to do with her? Surely it was a mistake. A scam, maybe. A will? "I don't know any." "Mr. Morrison?" she said cautiously, suspicion heavy in her voice. But the caller was calm, patient, and gave her an address on Wall Street, a place no scammer would dare invent. Curiosity and a flicker of dread pushed her to go. Stepping into the towering skyscraper in the heart of New York's financial district, Jessica felt like a grain of sand swallowed by a desert. The polished mahogany doors, the gleaming marble floors, the expensive art on the walls. It all made her feel small, out of place, trembling inside. She tried to steady her hands, but her heart thundered so loudly it was a wonder no one else could hear it. When the senior attorney, a stern man with gold-rimmed glasses, delivered the news, her knees nearly buckled. William Morrison had passed away quietly in his sleep 3 nights ago. Jessica's breath caught. Images of his sorrowful eyes, his frail smile, his whispered thank you that night came rushing back. A pang of regret and sorrow stabbed at her chest. And then the impossible happened. The attorney began to read from the will, each word striking her like a hammer blow. "I, William Morrison, of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath the entirety of my holdings, properties, and liquid assets valued at $2.8 billion to Jessica Parker, the woman who gave me my final breaths, a few precious days to complete my last wishes." Jessica's world tilted. $2.8 billion. Her ears rang, her chest pounded like a drum. This couldn't be real. Had she misheard? Was this some elaborate mistake? She clutched the armrest of her chair to keep from collapsing. But the attorney wasn't finished. He unfolded a separate letter, handwritten, addressed solely to Jessica. His voice softened as he read aloud. "You did not save me for money. That reminded me of Lily, my little girl lost too soon to illness. You've shown me that kindness still exists in this world. Use this gift to keep saving others, Jessica. Let it become a beacon of light for those whose hearts need warmth." Tears spilled down Jessica's cheeks. Not for the fortune, that number meant little compared to the weight of his words, but for the compassion of a man who had seen her, truly seen her in a world where she had always felt invisible. In her wildest dreams, she could never have imagined that one instinctive act of mercy, one moment of courage in a crowded restaurant, would be answered with such staggering generosity and such profound humanity. The news spread faster than wildfire. Jessica Parker, the poor waitress who had inherited $2.8 billion from a stranger, became a global sensation overnight. It was everywhere: tabloids, late-night shows, and the most respected outlets in the world. CNN, Fox News. The New York Times all splashed headlines across their front pages. Waitress inherits 2.8B, Cinderella story or elaborate scam. Suddenly, Jessica's private life was no longer her own. Every scrap of detail, her apartment, her school records, even the brand of coffee she bought was picked apart, dissected, magnified. And while the world gossiped, William Morrison's so-called rightful heirs, his 3 sons and a single granddaughter, were seething. Outrage boiled in their veins. To them, Jessica Parker wasn't a hero. She was an outsider, an opportunist, a gold digger who had stolen what was theirs by birthright. They wasted no time. At a press conference, their faces flushed with fury under the blinding lights of 100 cameras. "My father wasn't in his right mind," barked the eldest son, a smug businessman with arrogance etched into every syllable. "She manipulated him. She preyed on an old man in his weakest moment. This will is a fraud." They unveiled their weapon, Richard Sterling, the city's most feared attorney, a shark in a $1,000 suit. Sterling wasted no breath filing motions to strike down the will, vowing to prove in court that Jessica had exploited Morrison for financial gain. The world split in two. On social media, #WaitressBillionaire trended worldwide. One side championed Jessica, "She deserves this." Finally, good people get rewarded. "Never underestimate the working class." The other side mocked and sneered. "There's no such thing as a free lunch. This smells like a setup. Who saves someone's life and gets billions? Total scam." The noise grew into a storm, a hurricane of doubt, envy, and rage. Jessica's life descended into chaos. Paparazzi camped outside her shabby apartment, camera flashes lighting up her window like lightning. Strangers shouted questions at her on the street. Every step she took, every tear she shed was caught, published, and judged. At night, when the world's roar quieted just enough, Jessica held Anna tightly, her body trembling. "I'm scared, Anna," she whispered into the darkness. "But I didn't steal anything. I only saved him. That's all I did." Anna, frail but wise beyond her years, wrapped her small arms around her sister, pressing close as though she could transfer her strength. In that embrace, Jessica found her only refuge. But the storm outside their apartment walls was only just beginning. The legal battle between Jessica Parker and the Morrison family became the centerpiece of global media. The trial was held at the New York Supreme Court, one of the most prestigious courts in the country. Inside the chamber, tension hung thick in the air. Rows of reporters and members of the public packed every seat, their eyes fixed on the unfolding drama. Representing the Morrison heirs was Richard Sterling, a razor-sharp attorney with a reputation for being merciless. Sterling was ice-cold, his words precise and cutting. He opened by unleashing a barrage of evidence meant to prove William Morrison had not been of sound mind when drafting his final will. He called to the stand a renowned psychiatrist who testified that Morrison had shown signs of cognitive decline 3 months before signing the new will. An old sick man, Sterling declared, pacing before the jury. How could he possibly make a rational decision about an empire worth billions? His voice hardened as he turned toward Jessica. "This woman is no savior. She is a manipulator, a brazen opportunist who exploited a dying man's kindness to steal his fortune." Then, with a theatrical flourish, Sterling presented a grainy video clip. Jessica as a teenager laughing with friends while buying a lottery ticket. Here, he said with venom, is the real Jessica Parker. A girl obsessed with money, dreaming of quick fortune. That's the true nature of this so-called Good Samaritan. Jessica sat silently, head bowed, her hands trembling beneath the table. Each accusation cut into her like a shard of glass. Every skeptical glance from the gallery felt like a dagger. She had never asked for this fight, yet here she was, drowning in it. But she was not alone. Her counsel was Linda Torres, a seasoned attorney with silver hair, steady eyes, and a presence that radiated both strength and compassion. Linda was more than a lawyer. She was a mother, a woman who had lived through storms of her own. She saw truth in Jessica, and she was determined to defend it. Rising to her feet, Linda addressed the court with a voice that was calm, but carried the weight of conviction. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she began, this is not a case about greed. This is a case about a single act of humanity. Jessica Parker, a waitress struggling to make ends meet, saw a man choking and ran to save him. She did not know his name. She did not know he was billionaire William Morrison. Linda turned to the screen as footage played from the restaurant's CCTV cameras. The grainy video filled the courtroom, Jessica rushing forward, shoving others aside to perform the Heimlich maneuver while the crowd froze. Gasps rippled through the gallery. This, Linda said firmly, is what altruism looks like. No hesitation, no calculation, just instinct, the instinct to save a life. She then produced Morrison's latest medical report signed by his personal physician. Yes, Mr. Morrison's heart was weak, but his mind entirely sharp. He was a strategist to the very end. He knew exactly what he was doing. Finally, Linda called the notary who had witnessed Morrison's signature. A grizzled veteran of 30 years, the man's voice rang steady. I've notarized thousands of wills, he said. I can tell when someone is confused. Mr. Morrison. He was perfectly lucid. He answered every question clearly, even cracked a joke. If that young woman hadn't saved me, I'd have ended up dead as a steak on my own plate. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. For the first time since the trial began, a faint smile flickered across Jessica's lips. The war was far from over, but in that moment a spark of hope lit the darkness. The night before the verdict, sleep was impossible. Jessica lay restless in her cramped apartment, shadows stretching long across the peeling walls. The silence was heavy, broken only by the ticking of an old clock and Anna's faint breathing from the next bed. But in Jessica's mind there was no rest. Only the echo of Richard Sterling's accusations, the piercing stares of the public, the weight of the world pressing down on her chest. Could she really win? Would goodness be rewarded or crushed beneath greed and cynicism? Her greatest fear wasn't losing the fortune. It was losing her name, her honor. To be branded a fraud for life, to have her act of kindness twisted into a lie that was a punishment worse than poverty. In her despair, her eyes fell on the small box she'd been given by Green and Partners alongside Morrison's will. She had almost forgotten it existed. Inside was a simple USB drive. With trembling hands, she slid it into her battered old laptop. The screen flickered, then lit up. A video began to play. William Morrison appeared dressed in a sharp blue suit, seated in his familiar study. His face bore its usual melancholy, but his eyes glowed with warmth, with sincerity, with something like love. If you're watching this, Jessica, he began, his voice low, rich with feeling, then it means you're doubting yourself, feeling lost. He paused, steadying himself. I once had a daughter. Her name was Lily. She was the light of my life. I lost her to leukemia far too soon. Jessica's breath caught. Tears welled and spilled as she listened, her heart breaking for a grief she knew too well. You gave me 3 more days, Jessica. 3 days I was never promised. 3 days not just to finalize a will, but to look at Lily's photograph one last time. To whisper goodbye. His voice cracked, then steadied as he leaned closer to the camera. You gave me a gift no money could ever buy. Don't let them take that away from you. Don't let greed or cruelty rob you of your faith in goodness. You deserve everything I've given you. Use it. Be the light. Shine for others the way you shone for me. The screen went dark. Jessica collapsed onto the table, sobbing. But these were not the tears of fear or despair. They were tears of release, of understanding, of connection. William Morrison had not abandoned her. He was still with her, standing behind her in spirit, reminding her that her worth was not measured in dollars, but in the purity of her actions. She felt small arms wrap around her. Anna had woken, drawn by her sister's cries. The little girl pressed her cheek into Jessica's shoulder, whispering in her childlike, unwavering voice, "We have to win, Jess. We will win." Jessica wiped her eyes, inhaled deeply, and nodded. Yes, She had to win, not for the billions, not for the headlines, but for William, for Anna, and for the belief that kindness was still stronger than cruelty. April 17th, a date the world had been waiting for. The courtroom was packed to capacity, thick with tension. Reporters, spectators, the Morrison heirs, and Jessica with her attorney all sat on edge, every heartbeat echoing in the silence. Each passing second felt like an eternity. When the judge entered the room, fell utterly still. His gaze swept the chamber before his voice rang out solemn and commanding. The jury has reached a verdict. A collective breath was held. Jessica's head swam, her hands icy cold. She clutched Linda Torres's hand, drawing strength from the steady warmth of her lawyer's grip. After reviewing all evidence and testimony, the judge declared the jury finds that the will of Mr. William Morrison is fully valid and binding. The room erupted in gasps, a wave of murmurs crashing against the wooden walls. The gavel struck down, silencing the storm. Jessica nearly collapsed back into her seat. Her shoulders shook and tears streamed freely, unstoppable now. But these were not tears of despair. They were tears of relief, of vindication, of justice. She wept openly as Linda wrapped her in a proud, triumphant embrace. Across the aisle, the Morrison heirs sat stunned, their faces flushed with rage. Chairs scraped violently as they stormed outdoors, slamming behind them. Their voices rang with fury, promises of appeal, of dragging the fight further. But Linda, with a calm confidence, whispered to Jessica that their chances were all but gone. Justice had spoken. Outside on the courthouse steps, the world was waiting. A sea of microphones, cameras, and flashing lights swallowed Jessica as she emerged. Her face was streaked with tears, but her eyes shone with clarity and resolve. Taking a deep breath, she steadied her voice. "I don't consider myself worthy of such a fortune," she admitted, her tone trembling, yet sincere. "But I promise I will use every dollar to spread kindness to honor the wish of William Morrison. This is not just my inheritance, it is a responsibility, a chance to bring light to those who need it most." Her words cut through the noise broadcast across the globe, and as millions listened, doubt melted away. What remained was belief. Jessica Parker had not only won a trial, she had won the trust of the world. After her resounding victory in court, Jessica Parker's life turned to a completely new chapter. But she never forgot her promise or the final wish of William Morrison. Instead of drowning in luxury, Jessica's first act was to establish the Red Heart Foundation, a charity with a profound mission. Its purpose to provide medical scholarships for talented students from disadvantaged backgrounds, young people who, like Jessica once did, had been forced to abandon their dreams under the crushing weight of financial hardship. She vowed that no one would ever again have to set aside the calling to save lives because of money. But she didn't stop there. Jessica dedicated a massive portion of her inheritance to building a state-of-the-art pediatric cancer research institute. She named it the Lily Morrison Institute, after the daughter William had lost so many years ago. The center's mission was clear: to pursue groundbreaking treatments for leukemia and other life-threatening childhood diseases. It was not only a tribute to Morrison's memory, but a way to transform grief into hope for thousands of families who might otherwise face the same heartbreak. Meanwhile, Anna, the sister who had been Jessica's anchor, her greatest source of strength, finally received her long-awaited heart surgery. With the best doctors and cutting-edge care, Anna recovered fully. No longer trapped by the shadow of illness, she was free at last to live as any child should, running, laughing, and discovering life with joy. She began studying piano, and every afternoon the bright notes of her playing filled their home like a hymn to survival, to new beginnings. Watching Anna's cheeks flush with health and her eyes sparkle with life, Jessica knew every sacrifice had been worth it. Despite her billions, Jessica chose to remain simple and grounded. She never let wealth redefine her. On weekends, people still saw her at community soup kitchens, wearing her old apron, smiling warmly as she served meals to the homeless. "I only changed my bank account," she liked to say, "not who I am." Jessica Parker became more than a news story. She became a symbol, a beacon of kindness, a reminder that resilience, compassion, and courage could ripple outward and change the world. Her journey was no fairy tale. It was something greater, a living testament to the power of goodness and to the truth that one selfless act can transform not only a single life but countless others. If this story has touched your heart, if you believe that kindness will always be rewarded in the end, then don't hold back. Smash that like button, share this video with your friends and loved ones, and help spread this message of hope and humanity to as many people as possible. And of course, make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next inspiring story we bring to life. Oh, and here's something I'd love to know. What would you do if you suddenly inherited $2.8 billion? Drop your answers in the comments below. I'll be reading every single one. And who knows, maybe your idea could even inspire Jessica's next big charitable project. Why did Jessica Parker's story capture the world's imagination? Why did millions stop what they were doing just to listen? Surely it wasn't only about the staggering sum of money. It struck two of the deepest chords in the human spirit, the yearning to see the underdog triumph and the breathtaking wonder of witnessing a real-life miracle. In a world riddled with injustice and widening inequality, we long to believe that some hidden form of justice still exists. Jessica's story became living proof of that hope, a poor waitress rewarded not for ambition or cunning, but for pure, uncalculated kindness. It reminded us that the rich are not always cruel, the poor are not always doomed, and sometimes, just sometimes, opportunity appears from the most unexpected places born from a selfless act. Psychologist David Leving put it best: "We crave the belief that a single small action, one moment of kindness, can shape the universe around us." Jessica Parker's story is not about money. It's about the hope that humanity's best qualities still exist and that they can spark extraordinary change. It reminded us that even in moments that seem insignificant, we can create ripples that alter the course of lives. And the courtroom drama raised a larger question, both legal and moral. What does it mean to be of sound mind when drafting a will? Is it defined by anecdotes or by documents, by bias or by medical fact? The Morrison family tried to argue that William was incapable of sound judgment simply because of his age and frailty, but the court, backed by clear medical records and the testimony of the notary, gave a definitive answer. If you are lucid enough to thank the person who saved your life, lucid enough to recognize the value of kindness, then you are lucid enough to decide where your fortune should go. It was a ruling not just grounded in law, but in a profound understanding of human nature and the freedom of will. Jessica's story didn't go viral because it was a legal drama. It went viral because it reminded us of something much bigger: the enduring worth of kindness, the dignity of choice, and the extraordinary beauty that can emerge from the simplest of human acts. So, what does Jessica Parker's extraordinary story teach us? Quite a lot. But there are three powerful lessons we can all take away. First, never underestimate those who serve you. You never truly know who is standing in front of you, handing you a cup of coffee or placing a plate of food on your table. They might be a Jessica Parker in disguise, someone with a heart full of kindness whose fate could change in an instant. They might even be the person who saves your life, just as Jessica saved William Morrison. This lesson isn't just about respecting service workers. It's about respecting all people, regardless of their social standing. Everyone carries a story, a worth of dignity that can't be seen at first glance. Second, compassion has the power to rewrite destiny. Jessica's Heimlich maneuver took no more than 15 seconds. 15 seconds that didn't just save a life, it opened a future that transformed her own and her sister Anna's. It shows us that sometimes the smallest act, when done selflessly, can ripple outward in unimaginable ways. Kindness is not weakness. It is strength. It is energy. It is a seed that can grow into miracles. Third, when fortune comes unexpectedly, remember why you deserve it. Jessica didn't buy a supercar. She didn't plunge into reckless indulgence. Her first steps were to heal Anna, then to found a charity, then to build a research institute. She honored Morrison's legacy by pursuing the mission she once dreamed of herself, saving lives. That's why the public rallied behind her. That's why her story spread like wildfire. She proved her worth not by receiving the inheritance, but by how she used it. Money, in the end, is only a tool. Its true value lies in how we wield it to enrich not just ourselves, but the lives of others. Jessica turned billions into a force for good, a living beacon of kindness and hope. From a struggling waitress fighting day by day just to care for her younger sister, Jessica Parker became a billionaire, and more importantly, a philanthropist whose impact stretched far beyond herself. Her story isn't just a modern-day fairy tale. It's living proof that sometimes the most extraordinary miracles are born from a single act of kindness, from a fleeting moment of compassion. This story doesn't tell us to wait for luck. It doesn't encourage us to dream about fortunes falling from the sky. What it reminds us of is something deeper, that when we give without expecting anything in return, we open doors to possibilities we could never have imagined. We plant seeds of goodness, and one day those seeds may bloom into something extraordinary. So live with kindness, be generous, help whenever you can, because you never know who is sitting across from you and what they may one day leave behind for the world or for you. A smile, a word of encouragement, a small helping hand. Any of these could be the beginning of something truly great. If you found this story meaningful, inspiring, and worth sharing, don't hesitate to hit that like button. Share this video with your friends and family so together we can spread good news and heartwarming stories like this one far and wide. And if you'd love to hear more stories that truly touch the heart, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a single video. Finally, I'd like to invite you to leave your best wishes for Anna and for Jessica's Red Heart Foundation in the comments below. Your words of encouragement, your ideas, your support. They can all become a powerful source of motivation for their noble mission to continue. Thank you so much for listening.